كذبت قبلهم قوم نوح فكذبوا عبدنا وقالوا مجنون وازدجر فدعا ربه أني مغلوب فانتصر ففتحنا أبواب السماء بماء منهمر وفجرنا الأرض عيونا فالتقى الماء على أمر قد قدر وحملناه على ذات ألواح ودسر تجري بأعيننا جزاء لمن كان كفر وَلَقَدْ تَرَكْنَاهَا آيَةً فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ فَكَيْفَ كَانَ عَذَابِي وَنُذُرِ صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Ahsan, thank you, Brother Saeed. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you all for continuing to come to the programs of Muharram. Inshallah, we'll start tonight's program with poetry by Brother Asghar Ali. So welcome him with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal. بین کرتا ہوا خاک اڑاتا ہوا تشنہ لب بے ردا لو چلا قافلہ بین کرتا ہوا خاک اڑاتا ہوا تشنہ لب بے ردا لو چلا قافلہ سن کے شور فغاں ایک کوہرام ہے برسرے کربلا لو چلا قافلہ رسم پرداگری جس کے گھر سے چلی شاہزادی وہی بے ردا ہو گئیں مر نہ جائے کہیں غم سے بنت علی ہائے اب ہوگا کیا لو چلا قافلہ بین کرتا ہوا خاک اڑاتا ہوا تشنہ لب بے ردا لو چلا قافلہ اپنی صورت دکھا دو مجھے میری جاں پھر خدا جانے آنا ہو یا کہ نہ ہو آؤ اکبر اٹھو ہم کو رخصت کرو ماں نے رو کر کہا لو چلا قافلہ بین کرتا ہوا خاک اڑاتا ہوا تشنہ لب لو چلا قافلہ ثانیے فاطمہ بنت شیر خدا کیسے بازار میں جائیں گی بے ردا، کیسے طے ہوگا وہ راستہ، رو رہی ہے فضا لو چلا قافلہ، بین کرتا ہوا خاک اڑاتا ہوا تشنہ لب بے ردا لو چلا قافلہ، جن کی چاہت پہ کونین کو ناز ہے، جس کا ثانی زمانے میں کوئی نہیں، چاہنے والے وہ بھائی اور وہ بہن ہو رہے ہیں جدا، لو چلا قافلہ، بین کرتا ہوا خاک اڑاتا ہوا تشنہ لب بے ردا، لو چلا قافلہ، چار جانب سے یہ آ رہی ہے صدا، الوداع 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 الوداع، اپنے پیاروں کے لاشوں سے ہو کر جدا، خون روتا ہوا لو چلا قافلہ، بین کرتا ہوا خاک اڑاتا ہوا تشنہ لب بے ردا، لو چلا قافلہ، صلوات۔
Awesome. Thank you, Brother Asghar. Inshallah, next I'll recite a short poem in English on Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. It is called Let Me Show You, O Jabir. Jabir visits Karbala while he is old and blind. Grief grips his heart and sorrow torments his mind. He hears a man digging. Who does Jabir find? Alone weeps Imam Sajjad by the grave of his father. He asks Sajjad, O master, what happened here? Why do I find Hussein's grave wet with your tears? Why do I hear that heads were carried on spears? Sajjad takes his hand and weeps, let me show you, O Jabir. He speaks to Jabir and his voice is shaken. Jabir, over here the Ansar were taken, and no one was left to protect the children. Hussein stood crying their names, and none of them would answer. Over here the women cry, do you hear them? O Jabir, here they massacred our Qasim, a young boy, and the swords towered over him. With armor too big for him, we brought him to his mother. A body looks like Muhammad or Ali. Jabir, here Ali Akbar was killed thirsty, and within his father's arms he passed away. Who brought him water at last? Muhammad and Fatima. Did Abbas clench your fingers when he was born? O Jabir, here I saw the moon's arms were torn, yet only when he lost water he would mourn. With no flag and with no arms, I buried the flag bearer. O Jabir, don't ask why I returned in dread. I have returned to return my father's head. O Jabir, his grave weeps from the blood he's bled, and when I buried him, he cried, bring to me Ali Asghar. Salawat. I don't think Sheikh Mahdi is here yet. Saeed, do you have something in Farsi, like 5 minutes or something? I know, but we want to do like another language. Do you have something short in Farsi? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل
وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من نفسي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هو العلي العظيم، هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن، وهو بكل شيء عليم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. خودم دیدم که صحرا لاله‌گون بود، زمین از خون یاران غرق خون بود. خودم دیدم فضای آسمان ها پر از انا الیه راجعون بود. خودم دیدم که نور چشم زهرا جراحات تنش از فتح فزون بود. خودم دیدم که بر هر برگ لاله نوشته این سخن با خط خون بود. گلی گم کرده ام می جویم او را، به هر گل می رسم می بویم او را. گلی گم کرده ام می جویم او را، به هر گل می رسم می بویم او را. خودم دیدم گلوی اصغرش را، خودم در پر کشیدم اکبرش را. اگرچه از کنار نهر القم ز گریه منع کردم خواهرم را. خودم دیدم که زهرا ناله می کرد، خودم دیدم سرشک مادرم را. مکن منعم اگر با این همه داغ، برادر حسین جان. مکن منعم اگر با این همه داغ، زدم بر چوب محمل من سرم را. گلی گم کرده ام می جویم او را، به هر گل می رسم می بویم او را. خودم دیدم که دلها مرده بودند، خودم دیدم همه افسرده بودند. خودم دیدم کبوترهای معصوم همه در زیر پر سر برده بودند. خودم دیدم که گلهای نبوت ز بی آبی همه پژمرده بودند. همان جایی که فرزندان زهرا به جرم عشق سیلی خورده بودند. گلی گم کرده ام می جویم او را، به هر گل می رسم می بویم او را. گل من یک نشانی در بدن داشت، یکی پیراهن کهنه به تن داشت. سر نی در نینوا می ماند اگر زینب نبود، کربلا در کربلا می ماند اگر زینب نبود. چهره سرخ حقیقت بعد از آن طوفان رنگ، پشت ابری از ریا می ماند اگر زینب نبود. چشمه فریاد مظلومیت لب تشنگان در کویر تفت جا می ماند اگر زینب نبود. زخم زخمی ترین فریاد در چنگ سکوت از تراز نغمه وامی ماند اگر زینب نبود. ذوالجناح دادخواهی بی سوار و بی لگام در بیابانها رها می ماند اگر زینب نبود. در عبور از بستر تاریخ سیل انقلاب پشت کوه فتنه ها جا می ماند اگر زینب نبود. اللهم صل علی فاطمة و ابیها و بعلها و بنیها و سر المستودع فیها بعدد ما احاط به علمک. صلوات و محمد.
Ahsan, Brother Saeed. I'm still working on my Farsi, but I think if Agar Zainab Nabud means had Zainab had not been there. Ahsant. Inshallah, without further ado, if we can invite Sheikh Mahdi to the member with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
One loud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. It's okay, I got it. It's good. It's good. Thank you. That's good. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن الناس من يشتري لهو الحديث ليضل عن سبيل الله بغير علم ويتخذها هزوا أولئك لهم عذاب مهين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, a second loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. I'm honored to be back with the Austin community, have an opportunity to visit our dear brothers and sisters. And we begin tonight's talk by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept all of your acts of worship during these past 10 to 12 nights, this first ashra of Muharram. For all of those who have worked hard to make these majalis possible, one loud salawat. The topic that we'll be discussing over tonight, tomorrow night, and inshallah on Sunday is the topic of Islam's take on the issue of music. This is an issue that is extremely crucial for us to understand and discuss for a number of different reasons. And I will start mentioning these reasons so we can have a deeper appreciation of why we're taking time to discuss this topic. At the first level, music is something that we find all around us all the time. Doesn't matter where you go nowadays. If you're at school, either you're playing music or a friend of yours is playing music. Maybe you're on your way maybe to get some groceries at the grocery store. You will find music is being played there. If you go to a sports complex to get a workout in, you will find music is being played there. You might watch a video online or a commercial or an advertisement. You will find music is found there as well. Therefore, pretty much everywhere you go in today's world, music is part and parcel of life. It is almost inseparable from our lives today. In fact, if you find that on your phones, probably the most used application on the phone of the average person today might be an application called TikTok, quite a bit of the success that this application has is because usually every single video is coupled with a form of music. Hence, you find the very logo and icon of this application is one musical note. This is something you might have noticed. Therefore, at the first level, music is something that we find all around us. It's almost something you cannot escape at this point. This is at the first level. At the second level, And what makes this discussion even more complex and nuanced is that the topic of music does not present itself only in one category. If it was just one category, then Islam would sit there and either say yay or nay. Islam would either be okay with it or not be okay with it. The problem is that these types of music that we come across today are more than you can possibly count. There is music that can make you feel sad. There is music that can make you feel happy. There is music that can get you to think about things. There is music that can make you forget about certain things in life. There is music that can get you pumped up. There is music that can nearly get you depressed. There's all sorts of music out there. So this is the second level. Music is not of one sort and of one type. At the third level, the reason why it's important to discuss this topic is because, I don't know about you, growing up, we never got a clear answer on what is the issue that Islam has with the concept of music. In fact, growing up, every day we used to go to school, there was a new opinion, mashallah, a new fatwa every single morning about what type of music is allowed and what type of music is considered to be haram. One morning you would go to school, they would say the type of music that makes you want to dance along with it, this is haram. But the type of music that doesn't make you want to do that, this is allowed. Then you would go a little bit further. Next day you go to school, they say no. The type of music that has the wrong lyrics to it, this is haram. The type of music that doesn't have bad lyrics, the content is good content, this is allowed. And every day you would find a new ruling to be issued on this topic. So much so that you'll hear sometimes people will say, yes, these maraji', they change their opinion every other day on the topic of music, not knowing that they never learned the ruling to begin with, and hence they assume that the ruling is changing every other day. Believe it or not, when I was growing up, there was one opinion. I don't know which marja believes in this, because it was from no marja. But there was a friend of mine who came to me one day and he said, listen, you want to know what type of music is haram? I said, sure. He said, the type of music is haram, that when you listen to it, the beat on it goes faster than your heartbeats. And there's the type of music that goes slower than your heartbeat. If it goes slower than your heartbeat, then you are good, you are fine, there's no problem in listening to it. This is at the third level. There is a lot of confusion around this topic. I don't know if you've experienced this or not. Usually when you engage with someone around the topic of music, the discussion doesn't end in 5 minutes. It usually takes an hour, hour and a half to put your thoughts together on this topic. At the fourth level, this is a topic that directly correlates to the event of Karbala and the event of Ashura. And the reason for this is because when Imam al-Hussein came into the land of Karbala, many of us look at this as a battle of swords, where in reality it was a battle of lifestyles. And one of those elements that you see in the lifestyle of the Yazidi camp is engaging in haram entertainment and engaging and listening to haram music. This is mentioned in history, that amongst the things that Yazid la'natullahi alayhi used to do, aside from his drinking, aside from his gambling, aside from playing with the monkeys and the dogs and so on and so forth, one of the things that Yazid was known for was spending money on buying female singers. And this was so common within his courtyard that at one point the famous companion Ibn Abbas raised objection to him. He said, Yazid, you keep claiming you're the follower and the successor to the Prophet, but this lifestyle is not how the Prophet used to live his life. Hence, sometimes objection is raised, why are we discussing this Muharram and Safar? In fact, Muharram and Safar is exactly the time to discuss this topic, because we don't want to end up with those types of people. And in those situations, who are living the lifestyle of the Yazids of the world. This is exactly correlating to the topic of Muharram and the movement of our beloved Imam. Therefore, for these four reasons, and because discussing this topic will help us understand other aspects of our faith and religion as well, we want to take some time over the next 3 nights to discuss this topic. And in order to do so, we'll pose the following questions. Number 1, what are the 4 types of music that presented themselves during the time of the Prophet, and how did the Prophet deal with these 4 types of music? Number 2, when we want to understand what Islam's ruling is on the issue of music, can we sit back and guess and assume what Islam has to say about this? Or do we have to actually go to our sources and kneel in front of Quran and Ahl Bayt and let them speak for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instead of you and I speaking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 3, what is the fundamental problem that Islam has with music anyways? The problematic lyrics that you find in a lot of songs, whether they have sexual references to alcohol and substance abuse, or is there a deeper, more fundamental issue that Islam has with the topic of music? Number 4, what is the concept of lahwa and how does it occur in Quran and Hadith? Number 5, if Islam has declared some forms of music to be haram, does this mean that Islam is dismissing the power of music and the impact that it has on our lives today? Or is this Islam showing us the importance and acknowledging the impact that music has on our lives today? And number 6, and finally, when our beloved 9th Imam was in a forced wedding to the daughter of Ma'mun, the Mal'un Khalifa, how did he react when Ma'mun drew up a plot to have someone come and produce haram music with an instrument in the wedding of our beloved Imam al-Jawad? Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these 6 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Let's begin from here. The topic of music is something, of course, that has evolved quite a bit over time. During the time of the Prophet, singing and music was something that was quite limited. The most prominent example of music and singing, you might have found it in someone living in the middle of the desert with camels. This was a custom of the Arab, that when they wanted the camels to move faster in the desert, they used to sing to the camels, believe it or not. And these camels would respond to that and they would move on. The person leading the caravan used to do this. These are basic forms of singing. There was singing that used to happen in weddings, for example, basic forms of singing. However, when the Prophet came into the picture and Islam emerged, there were 4 types of music that Islam immediately raised objection to. 4 uses of music that Islam had a problem with. The first of these was when music or singing or clapping or dancing became part of the religious ritual that we know of as tawaf today. The Quran talks about this. The Quran says, وَمَا كَانَ صَلَاتُهُمْ عِنْدَ الْبَيْتِ إِلَّا مُكَاءً وَتَصْدِيًا. There were people, when they used to come to Masjid al-Haram, the customs of Ibrahim had become so polluted with nonsense that at this point they used to come, do tawaf, sometimes not even dress properly. And as part of their tawaf was what? Was the clapping and the singing and the dancing that they used to do. Islam immediately raised objection to this, number 1. Number 2 was the type of recitation of poetry that there were people used to do who used to get paid to undermine the message of the prophets. So if the Prophet has come forward and said that I'm a messenger of God, what I say is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this poet would come forward with strong poetry. He would do what is referred to as hajwa of the Prophet. He would make fun of the Prophet. He would call him crazy, possessed, so on and so forth. The Prophet actually dealt with this in a very serious manner. This was not a small matter because it affected how the Prophet could share his message with his ummah. This was number 2. At a third level, you had the example of the battlefields. When the kuffar and mushrikeen used to come to the battlefield, in order to have that encouragement for their men, they used to bring with themselves female singers and people who would use their femininity in order to invoke the masculinity in these men to go out to the battlefield and face the Prophet. In the Battle of Uhud, this was very clear. They were in the back, the men were in the front. And anytime these men would seem to be a little bit weaker, now they want to head back, now they want to retreat. Beginning of Uhud was a victory for Muslims, at the very beginning at least. They would recite poetry and they would sing and they had musical instruments to push them, to cheer them on. And the fourth of these was the type of singing and clapping that used to happen in places that were known as houses of debauchery and corruption, the type of places where people used to go to engage in haram relationships and things of that nature. This was referred to as a house known as hana. This was the terminology they used to use. At that time, all 4 of these, Islam raised objection to. However, the use of singing and music was very limited during the time of the Prophet. As time went on, of course, music and singing started to flourish in a negative manner. specifically during the time of Bani Umayyah, and even more so during the time of Bani al-Abbas. During the time of Bani Umayyah, and this is for those who wonder if this topic has anything to do with the message of Imam al-Hussein. It has everything to do with the message of Imam al-Hussein. During the time of Bani Umayyah, one of the things that the Muawiyahs of the world and the Yazids of the world did, and they did a very good job at it, even though it was evil, was they used to pay the singers to promote singing and music within society. Why? Well, because the more you're involved in this kind of stuff, the less you have to worry about what Yazid is doing or what Muawiyah is doing or what your Imam has to say. You don't worry about these things. You move on with life. And hence you find Mecca and Medina, that both schools of thought in Islam consider to be haramain of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, became places where people used to come and stand in line waiting for the singers to enter into the city. This was one of the things that Bani Umayyah started the trend on. And this continued until Ibn Abbas, like we said, he raised objection to Yazid. He said, how are you a successor of the Prophet when this was never part of the lifestyle of our Prophet? When it came to Bani al-Abbas, this only increased. Now, during the time of Bani al-Abbas, there was almost no Khalifa who had gatherings without there being usually female singers who were present and they were going to perform for him. And not only was he okay with it, not only would he encourage it, in fact, he would pay grand amounts of dinars and dirhams to this person. So you find Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani, he's a scholar or a historian, I should say, who's written a book by the name of Al-Aghani, stories all revolving around the topic of ghina and music and singing about the lives of the khulafa and their lavish gatherings. And so in the book you find that, for example, this Khalifa, he had particular singers that were his favorites. He used to pay them if they came forward with a beautiful poetry and a beautiful song, beautiful in the negative sense of the word. He had a specific gift that he would grant to them. So during the time of Bani al-Abbas, this became part and parcel of the courtyard of the Khalifa, someone who's supposed to represent the Prophet, of course. As time continued, of course, we know the evolving of music happened, come all the way till the time of the 1800s and the Mozarts of the world and the Beethovens of the world, up to today, where music has now taken on this contemporary form that it has. And of course, technology that exists today has changed the face of music altogether from what it used to be maybe 100 years ago. Okay, we understand this. Now we have to actually get into the main question that we want to take time to discuss. What is Islam's issue with the issue of music or the topic of music? Fundamentally, does Islam have a problem with this or not? Is it a big deal if I'm driving somewhere and I put on this music, for example, this famous singer, this famous rapper, yes, this famous musician, the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to do, one might ask, does he really care if I'm driving somewhere and I listen to this music? Doesn't he care more about me being a person of charity, of kindness, of fairness to other people? Does he really care if, for example, I'm driving and I listen to this music, but at the same time I pray, I fast, and I'm kind to the people around me? This is a valid question. And when people bring up this question, brothers and sisters, the answer is always this: I don't know if it's a big deal. We have to go ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to see if it's a big deal. People will sit there in this area, in other areas of life. I don't think this is a big deal. Okay, you don't think that's a big deal. Who are you? Sheikh Mahdi doesn't think it's a big deal. Who's Sheikh Mahdi? Who gave him authority to talk about this? Who gave him authority to figure out how spirituality plays out in your life or doesn't play out? This is your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Na'udhu billah, God forbid, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can't speak for himself. So then you and I have to sit there and say, I don't think it's a big deal. What gives you authority to think it's a big deal or not think it's a big deal, or gives me authority to think it's a big deal or not? You have to go and kneel in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in front of Quran and Ahl Bayt, and ask them, is this going to negatively affect my relationship with God or not? Well, I listen to it, it doesn't feel like it. Who said religion is about what you feel? It's not about what you feel. When you wake up 5 o'clock in the morning, 6:30, I'm not sure what time sunrise is over here. Of course, Muhammad here would definitely be an expert in that number and that time, because sunrise is exactly roughly around when he would get up to pray, but we leave that for another time. When you wake up, let's say you wake up late, 2 minutes before sunrise, and you want to go and pray, and Islam says you have to run and go and pray. Do you feel spiritual while you're rushing to do your wudu quickly and go and pray? I don't know about you, I don't feel spiritual. But yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this is very important. He says if you don't do this, this is a major sin. He says get up and rush. Does it feel like you're practicing meditation when you're rushing to the bathroom and then to pray? No. Does it feel spiritual when you have to drop the surah that you're reciting? You can't do any mustahabbat. You just have to fit the most of your prayer that you can within this time. No, it may not feel so spiritual. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, this is very important for you, what you do. Practicing Islam, brothers and sisters, is not about feeling spiritual. That's a topic for another time that we'll have to get to another time. So when we come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we want to see what is a big deal and what is not a big deal, brothers and sisters, you have to set aside this arrogance that we have, these assumptions that we make. So you don't think it's a big deal. Great. You know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinks? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of His unlimited knowledge and wisdom, He doesn't really care what you think. He's the one who's in charge. He's going to tell you, is this a problem? Is this not a problem? Now, whether you think it's a problem or not is irrelevant at this point. If you're Muslim, someone may not be Muslim, they want to decide about every little issue. Is this a problem in my life or not? Fine. This is not Muslim. You can carry on with this lifestyle, yes? But if you're Muslim and you did Islam and you submitted yourself, it doesn't matter anymore what you think about this issue. Sometimes when we come to these issues, we essentially change and replace the place of the teacher and the student. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching you His religion, but then at one point we turn around and say, I don't think you know what you're talking about so much. I don't think it's a big deal. So you're teaching God now. So the Quran has a beautiful verse. He says, قُلْ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, tell them, أَتُنَبِّئُونَ اللَّهَ بِمَا لَا يَعْلَمُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Are you guys trying to teach God about things He doesn't know about this world that He's created? So you find the first Imam, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. He has a beautiful narration in Al-Khisal of Shaykh al-Saduq. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses you and I. He says the following, Ya ibadi, ati'uni fima amartukum bih. Obey me when it comes to those things I told you to do. وَلَا تُعَلِّمُونِ بِمَا يُصْلِحُكُمْ. Don't sit there and teach me what you think is the right thing to do or not to do. You're not in a position of authority. You and I came from the most humble of beginnings. A drop of fluid, a speck of dust, whatever the Quran talks about, dirt, whatever, all of these are true. Yes? This is where we came from. And then we think we know everything there is to know about life. Half of our lives we're asleep. The other half we're running around errands, this and that, but we think we're the most wise person to ever walk on earth. I don't think it's a problem. When did you have time to sit down and figure out life that you sit here and you say, I don't think it's a problem? You and I, brothers and sisters, we're not in a position of knowledge. We have to go to Quran and Ahl Bayt and see what they have to say on this issue. So now let us go to them and see what they want to say about this issue. Another salawat, please. When you go to Quran and Hadith, brothers and sisters, you would assume that the problem that Quran and Hadith has with the issue of music is the type of lyrics that you find in most songs today. There are songs, they have, forgive me, sexual references, yes? There are songs, they have references about alcohol and substance abuse. There are songs that have references about violence, and so on and so forth. So you and I, when we look at these, we say, clearly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a problem with this type of music. Of course, this is definitely problematic. But when you go deeper, you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a bigger issue that goes beyond this. Meaning, sometimes the music you and I might listen to may not have any of these lyrics, but still Islam might have a problem with it. So what's that ingredients that is the main ingredients. Yes, sometimes when you look on labels, they will say, this ingredient is the main ingredient. It is the main functioning ingredient. What is that main issue that Islam therefore has with music? It is a concept known as the concept of lahu. Lahu. L-A-H-W. Lahu. What is lahu? Lahu means when you engage in a behavior that makes you less likely of thinking about the important things in life. It's that type of entertainment that makes you feel like, I don't have many duties anyways. So you're living life thinking to yourself, I have to pray, I have to fast, there's someone who's watching me. Now this music is being played. Now this person is less likely to worry about his salat. He's less likely to worry about his duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fundamentally, he's less likely of looking towards his akhirah. It doesn't mean he's going to get up and do something terrible in the moment. No. But when he listens to this type of music, and not all types of music fall under this category, by the way, but when he listens to this type of music, now the akhirah is less of a concern for him. How does that play out in his day-to-day life? For every person, it could be different. Every person, it could be different. For one person, it means now it's a little bit easier for him not to lower his gaze when he sees something haram. For someone else, it means it's a little bit lazier when it comes to his salat. For another person, it means that apology he had to give to this other person, it's no problem. There are types of music that create this effect and impact in the human being. And Islam fundamentally has a problem with this concept. You might sit back and say, well, Shaykh, just being entertained a little bit and so on and so forth. I don't think that's a problem in and of itself. It's a problem because it opens you up to thousands of other sins. When you look at the people who ended up in hellfire, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say they ended up there? There's one point that comes up in multiple verses of the Quran. What is that one point? Bima nasu yawm al-hisab. Because they forgot this day. The people who make it to heaven, you know what their reaction is when they give them their book of deeds? They say, Ha umuqra'u kitabiyah. Everyone come and look at my book of deeds. And then immediately afterwards, you know what they say? Inni dhanantu anni mulaqin hisabiyah. I knew this day was coming. I was planning for this day. I never forgot about this day. The other side, what about them? The Quran says they forgot about their akhirah. This was the problem. You say, but Shaykh, when I listen to this music, I'm not going to go kill anyone, do this. Of course not. Alhamdulillah, I hope not. Yes? Though music has that power, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. But the role that music plays is that it makes the akhirah, some types of music, makes the akhirah less important in your view. Because you're entertained here. Not worried about this and that. And the day of judgment, they're going to ask me about this. They're going to, it's okay. It's the vibe is going and everything is fine. Everything feels wonderful. Important question. Someone might say, but Shaykh, there's a lot of other things that I also do that makes me forget about the akhirah a little bit. I have hobbies. Maybe I watch a basketball game. Maybe I watch an NFL game. Maybe I spend time with my friends. When I'm spending time with my friends, it's not like we're doing tasbih all the time. It's not like we're doing ibadah every second. Yes? And I tell this brother, don't worry, I know. You're not thinking of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala either. Yes? This is true. But you know what the difference is between those other activities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, halal. Even if you forget a little bit about the day of judgment and akhirah, you're not actively thinking about those things, it's okay. But the music is a problem. You know why? Because when it comes to music, that impact and the effect is far greater than a lot of these other activities that Islam will call halal. You say, no, Shaykh, I don't think music has this power. Hold on, we're going to get to that in just a moment. You'll see music has far greater power than you even assumed. You know what the difference is between music and some of the normal activities you and I take part in, hobbies we take part in, where when we are taking part in those hobbies, we're not actively thinking about akhirah necessarily, but Islam still says what? It's okay, no problem. You know what the difference is? It's like walking into the doctor's office one day, and say, hey doc, how are you? I was like, I'm doing well. What's going on? What's the problem? Say, I had this headache, so I took some Tylenol. Okay, no problem. Doctor's not going to yell at you. Now imagine you walked into the doctor's office and you said, what's wrong? I said, nothing, I had headache, so I took some morphine. He's going to yell at you. Say, but morphine, Tylenol, they're the same thing. They remove your pain. And he'll tell you, no, this one, its power is limited. This one, the power is too much. You can't handle it. Not all forms of music. Certain types of music have this impact on the human being. Yes, there's a lot of things you engage in life where you're not actively thinking about the akhirah. But not many of them have the type of power on the human being that music has and can have. So you say, oh, Sheikh, I don't think music is that much of a big deal. It's just something I listen to and I move on with life. I don't think any type of music has that type of power that it can impact my life and so on and so forth. No, pay attention. I'll give you some examples. You tell me if music has the power that I'm speaking of, or no, it's not a big deal. I'll tell you, brothers and sisters, before I give you these examples, music is something we don't even understand its power, because it's intangible. It's not tangible that we can see easily. So we say it's not a big deal, just something you listen to. Islam says, no, it's a very big deal. It impacts you deeply. Imagine, brothers and sisters, imagine a gathering where it's a gathering of sin. Haram. Imagine every type of sin is happening in this gathering, yes? People are gambling, they're drinking, engaging with each other, so on and so forth. The typical gatherings that might be happening on a night like this or tomorrow night to these weekends, yes? Imagine a gathering like that. Imagine if you took a gathering like that, brothers and sisters, and only made one change to it, one change. Nothing else. The gambling is still happening, the alcohol is still there, yes? The engaging, the dancing, whatever sins, typical sins, yes? Imagine if all of that was still there, but you just made one change to that gathering. Imagine if you turned down the music. What happens to that gathering? All of a sudden, it's dead. All of a sudden, that gathering is dry. All of a sudden, it doesn't have the same vibes it used to have. All of a sudden, people aren't, going from one corner to another corner. All of a sudden, everything doesn't feel welcoming to sin anymore. You've seen in the movies, when the police shows up to shut down the illegal party, what's the first thing he does? Shuts down the music. They shut down the music. Why? Because the moment you shut down the music, this whole gathering changed. And then you sit there and say, no, music doesn't have power. It doesn't have no, Habibi, it has a big power. Huge impact on the life of the human being. Just this one change. Now, is this person more, likely to go and gamble now, drink now, or less likely by a lot? He's less likely by a lot to commit these sins. This is exactly the role that lahu plays. It opens the door for other things. Itself seems very neutral. Oh, I'm not a problem. I just have some entertainment for you. But in fact, it opens the door for a lot of other things to make their way into the life of the human being. Yes? I'll give you another example. You're driving from Austin to Dallas. May Allah protect you from this drive. On the Google Maps, it says 3.5. I promise you it feels like 10, 12. Okay? You stopped at your Buc-ee's, at the beginning of the trip, everyone's always excited, yeah? Oh, let's stop here, let's stop there. You stopped everywhere. You saw all the beavers that you had to see, yes? Okay. Then after an hour, hour and a half, now you start regretting the trip, yes? Not for me, of course. When I was coming to see you guys, so I wasn't regretting it. You're regretting it, yes? You're on your way, you start to regret, you're like, what is this? This is a very dry time. It is. You're just driving, mashallah, Texas and got nothing in terms of natural scenes and so on and so forth, yes? It's not Seattle, so you're driving. As you're driving, what happens when you turn on music? Now all of a sudden, that same drive that was dry, boring, it's almost as if someone is taking the time and having it pass faster. Every one of us has had this experience. Did anything change around you? Are you going faster, slower? No, it's all the same. But this is the power of music. Music, remember this line. Music has the power to make you feel like things are changing around you without anything really changing around you. This is the power that music has. So you're concerned with different concerns you have in life. Now I turn on this haram music, which we're going to talk about more tomorrow night, what types are specifically haram. I turn on this haram music. Now my concerns are going away, so it makes me feel like things are different. Are things different? No, they're exactly the same. You still have the same problems. Still have to pay that student debt. Still have to write that paper. So whatever it is that was on your mind before. All of that is still there. This is the power of music. Music has the type of power, certain types of it, yes? Whenever I say music, understand, I'm talking about certain types of it, which we'll discuss more tomorrow, inshallah. This is not about all forms of music. Music has that type of power that it can push a human being to shoot and kill another human being in cold blood. Has that power. Go look in the documentaries of soldiers who were in Iraq. Why did you shoot this person? Why did it feel so easy for you? Why was it so, normal for you? They say a part of it was because of the music that we used to listen to. This music that we were jamming to, it's almost like it's a video game now. And then you and I say, music is not a big deal. No, music has very far-reaching implications in the life of the human being. And this is why you find Ahl Bayt took music very seriously. They did not approach the topic of music in a light manner. Someone might say, well, Sheikh, I'm never going to do that. Well, alhamdulillah, I hope you never do that. But that's the extreme version of killing someone in cold blood. You and I, we might engage in smaller sins, but they're sins. Doesn't have to be killing someone in cold blood to understand that something opens you up to sins. That's the extreme version. We may never ever deal with that, inshallah, yes? But for you and I, it might be the sin of delaying my prayer, skipping a prayer, yes? Getting to the wrong gatherings. These are all the power that music has. And hence you find in the life of the Ahlul Bayt, they took it very seriously. And you find this in the life of our beloved Imam al-Jawad, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. In the life of Imam al-Jawad, we read of a forced wedding that Ma'mun, the Khalif, in his own right, was a very smart person. He just used his genius in the form of evil. He forced Imam al-Jawad into a marriage to his daughter Fadl. This marriage, Imam al-Jawad knew that he had no option to say no to this, because it's either this or his life is going to be taken, the Imam is going to be martyred. Hence, the Imam gave into this. Now, there's a discussion about what happened when he gave into it, and so on and so forth. Even some of the friends of Ma'mun came and raised objection to him. We'll leave that for another time. When the wedding was set up, Ma'mun had a plot and a plan. His plot was what? This Imam al-Jawad, this Muhammad ibn Ali, I want to bring him into the luxurious lifestyle of the castle. Bring him into the lifestyle of the palace. Because if he gets hooked on the pleasures of the life in palace, well, he's not going to object to my issues and this and that. We'll be on the same page at that point. If he gets used to living a luxurious life, he's not going to start risking it for this and that. So this was his plot. This was his understanding. Of course, Ma'mun himself was like this. He might have assumed that he can trick the Imam in this way as well. So what did he do? The wedding that he set up was not a normal wedding. This was a wedding that was extremely lavish and extremely full of sin, or at least Ma'mun tried to make it one. So you read in history that one of the things that Ma'mun did is that when the khutbah of the nikah was recited, then he had a lot of other young women come and congratulate the Imam. Of course, when your nikah is recited, it's not other women who are supposed to be coming. You're supposed to be seeing your bride and so on and so forth, yes? But this was part of the plots of Ma'mun, that he had tens of other young women come. So the narration says, the historical narration says, that as they came, the Imam, he looked down, he lowered his gaze, and they came and went. Other lavish aspects to this wedding, it's a long story. One of those plots that he had was to play the type of music in this gathering to get the imam into the lahwi lifestyle. So he went to a person who used to play musical instruments, which we will discuss inshallah, I believe on the third night. His name was Muharram. He said, Muharram, I need you to do something. I need you to play the type of music that no human being can resist. Beautiful music. And of course, when you talk about musical instruments at that time, 99% of the usages were haram usages. It's a little different from today. We'll talk about this on the third night, inshallah. Muharram said, I'm your guy. I can take care of it. This is my skill. This is what I do. This is my expertise. He turned to Ma'mun. He said, don't worry. If you get Muhammad al-Jawad there, I will be able to play this music and he will give in to it. He will take interest in this. So the historical narration says, as this wedding took place, at one point, after everyone came and congratulated the Imam, then Ma'mun, he gestured to Muharram. Muharram, start your playing of the musical instruments. And so he started to play the musical instrument, but immediately he felt the eye and the looks and the views of Imam al-Jawad coming his way. That clearly Imam al-Jawad is not happy with what he is doing, because this musical instrument in that context is definitely haram. So as he's playing this musical instrument, the Imam keeps looking at him, meaning you need to stop. This is a sin. He continued. The narration says, at one point, Imam al-Jawad turned towards him and yelled at him. He said, Ittaqillah. Fear Allah. And Muharram's hands stopped playing the musical instrument because he couldn't play anymore. His hands started to tremble. Later, Ma'mun came to him. He said, what happened? This was our plan. This was our plot to get him into this lifestyle. He said, the moment he called me and he said, Ittaqillah, firmly like that, my hand couldn't play anymore. And for the rest of his life, Muharram could not play this musical instrument anymore. Of course, for you and I, brothers and sisters, this is not the duty to go into some wedding and yell at someone, of course. This is the Imam in a very particular situation where haram is happening in front of him. The Imam, from a spiritual perspective, is being disrespected. This is why the Imam reacted in this way, yes? But one thing we definitely learned from the story is that the Ahl Bayt did not take this topic lightly. They took it very seriously. That is the type of taqwa that this family had, and the type of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this family had. And it was only through this obedience that made it possible for them to deal with the calamities and the masa'ib on the 10th of Muharram, before the 10th of Muharram, and after the 10th of Muharram. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Ibn Rasulillah. During this whole journey, brothers and sisters, as the Imam went from Medina all the way on his way to Kufa, and from there the caravan continued towards Kufa and Sham and back to Medina, the maqatil, they display for us and portray for us many different scenes that are painful scenes, that are full of pain and anguish. But I want to take your hearts, brothers and sisters, to a particular moment that is specifically painful in the story of Hussein and his family. Because on the 10th of Muharram, the morning began with masa'ib and musibah. After musibah came the way of the Imam. Only Allah knows what happened to the heart of Hussein on that day. All of these other difficulties and calamities, all of these masa'ib coming his way in one day. Maybe the whole event of Ashura, less than 10 to 12 hours. How many loved ones did Hussein lose on that day? How many times did Zainab have to run out of the tents to come and help her beloved brother, to be able to come back to the tents, give him a little bit of comfort? You think Hussein was able to take that day on his own? He couldn't take that day on his own. If it wasn't for Zainab and Abbas, maybe Hussein's back would have broken a lot faster, a lot sooner on the 10th of Muharram. But you know what that moment was? That was a painful, difficult moment. At one point, all of these companions of the Imam have gone to the battlefield. The narration says he looked left and he looked right. In front front of him, the army that doesn't end, more and more troops pouring in. Then all of a sudden, the narration says he started to call out some of his own companions. He said, Ya Zuhair ibn Ghayn, Ya Nafi' ibn Hilal, where are you guys? The haram and the tents and the women and the children, they are lonely without anyone to protect them at this point. The narration says Hussein knew at this point that the final moments have come. These moments that the women and children were all fearful of. They were all knowing that this moment was coming closer and closer. But now this moment has come. Then the Hussein turned back to the tents. He called out something so painful. The narration says, "Iltafata ila al-khayma." He turned to the tents. Salam, my salam goes to you. Then all of a sudden, the women and the children in the tent started to cry, and crying heavily. On the 10th of Muharram, there were particular times where Hussein said things and the women and the children in the tent started to cry and weep, and this was one of the most painful ones because they knew that this is the last time they're seeing their father. This is the last time they're seeing their uncle in the middle of the battlefield. Then the narration says Sukaina called out. She said, Ya Abba, astaslamta lil maut, are you preparing for death? This is it. I'm not going to see you anymore. You're not going to be able to embrace me anymore. Hussein said, what else can I do? There's no more help left. Abu al-Fadl Abbas is gone. Ali al-Akbar is gone. Qasim ibn al-Hasan is gone. The two sons of Zainab, they're all gone. My daughter, there's no one else to protect the haram of Rasulullah. The narration says Hussein started to make his way into the tent. Imagine the moment he walked into this tent, how these women and children started to gather around him, how they started to circle Hussein. Maybe some of these children started to pull on the clothing of Hussein, saying, Father, don't leave us here in the middle of this desert. Don't leave us here without our uncle Abbas. What went through the heart of Hussein in those moments? The narration says Hussein started to say his farewell to each and every one of these women and children. We don't know what he said to each one of them, but you know, one of them has been narrated in history because the moment he walked into the tent, the narration says Sukaina was crying the most, and there were tears flowing from her eyes. And at this point, Hussein turned to his own daughter and he said, Sukaina, promise me one thing, that if you're going to cry, leave your crying for after I'm gone. Because when you cry while I'm still here, it's too painful for me. The heart of your father can't take this pain. Spare your father the pain of seeing these tears. لا تحرقي قلبي بدمعك حسرة. Don't put this pain in my heart with your tears. Sukaina, hold on a little bit, because after I'm gone, Sukaina, there's going to be a lot of crying. There's going to be a lot of weeping. There's many masa'ib that will come your way. The narration says he started to embrace Sukaina and he kissed the forehead of Sukaina, and finally he said his farewell to everyone. Now imagine as Hussein leaves this tent, what are these women and children doing in these moments? What's going through their hearts in these moments, knowing this is the final time they will embrace their father in these moments? The narration says Hussein got on his horse. In front of him, an ocean of an army, people who have come to kill him. They won't even leave the clothes on his body. As he prepares for battle, all of a sudden a call came from the tents. Mahlan mahla yabna Zahra. Oh son of Zahra, go slowly, go slowly. If you knew what you're doing to the heart of these women and children, this is their last time to see you. Oh son of Zahra, go slowly. All of a sudden the army on the other side says, we saw him preparing for battle, his armor on, ready to go. And all of a sudden we saw Hussein is moving slowly, and we saw he bent down. What did he bow down for? He bent down because Zainab came to kiss him on that same neck that is going to be cut momentarily, to kiss him on that neck that the Prophet kissed many times. Zainab came to embrace Hussein in those final moments. Allah la'natullah ala al-qawmi al-zalimin. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. With your tears in your eyes, let us send our salams to our beloved Imam in the plains of Karbala. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم everyone. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن وعلى أولاده الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ماتم حسين.
يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين
بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں کیسا ہے یہ چراغا دل ڈوبے جا رہے ہیں کیا شام آ گیا ہے اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں کیسا ہے یہ چراغا دل ڈوبے جا رہے ہیں کیا شام آ گیا ہے اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں نیزوں پہ جتنے سر ہیں ایک سر ہے ان میں ایسا آنکھیں ہے بند اس کی اور خاک پر ہے گرتا عباس کا یہ سر ہے تیور بتا رہے ہیں کیا شام آ گیا ہے اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں نیزوں پہ جتنے سر ہیں ایک سر ہے ان میں ایسا آنکھیں ہے بند اس کی اور خاک پر ہے گرتا عباس کا یہ سر ہے تیور بتا رہے ہیں کیا شام آ گیا ہے اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں ماؤں کی گودیوں سے لپٹے ہوئے ہیں بچے ہے ہاتھ رسیوں میں ماؤں کے ایسے جکڑے بچے جو گر رہے ہیں وہ مرتے جا رہے ہیں کیا شام آ گیا ہے اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں ہونے لگی اذانیں کیسے سروں کو ڈھانپے بازو بندھے ہوئے ہیں خون رو رہی ہے آنکھیں آنکھوں کے خون سے رستے خون میں نہا رہے ہیں کیا شام آ گیا ہے اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں ہے لوگ کس طرح کے ہم سے دعا کرائیں اے قیدیوں دعا دو یہ دن نہ ہم پہ آئے لے کر دعائیں ہم سے دل بھی دکھا رہے ہیں کیا شام آ گیا ہے اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں ریحان قیدیوں میں برپا تھا شور گریا پلکوں سے کر رہی تھی ماتم جو بنت زہرا سجاد نوحہ خواہ ہے نوحہ سنا رہے ہیں کیا شام میں آ گیا ہے اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں اما فضا بتا دے مجھ کو پتھر کیوں آ رہے ہیں یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ
اعظم اللہ اجورنا باجورنا بمصائبنا بالحسین وجعلنا وإياكم من الطالبین بسارہما ولی الامام المہدی من آل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم. متوجہ زیارت. السلام علیکم یا ابا عبداللہ، السلام علیکم یا ابن رسول اللہ، السلام علیکم یا ابن امیر المومنین وابن سید الوسین، السلام علیکم ابن فاطمۃ الزہراء سیدۃ النساء العالمین، السلام علیکم امام الحسن والحسین سیدین علیین شباب اہل الجنہ، السلام علیکم الارواح التی حلت بفنائک، علیکم منی جمیعا سلام اللہ ابدا ما بخیت و بخی اللیل والنہار ولا جعل اللہ آخر الہدی منی لزیارتکم. السلام علی الحسین وعلی علی ابن السلام علیکم جمیعاً شہدائے کربلا و اسیران کربلا، السلام علیکم ثانی زہرا زینب، السلام علیکم غازی ابو الفضل العباس ابن امیر المومنین ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. السلام علیکم غریب الغرباء یا معین الضعفاء والفقراء الرضا المرتضیٰ، روحی و جسمی لک الفدا کل شفیون شفیون والدین فی یوم الجزا. السلام علیکم اخت کا فاطمہ معصومہ ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. السلام علیکم صاحب العصر والزمان، الامان 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 من فتنة الزمان، امام الانس والجان، شریک القرآن، حجت الایمان، خلیفۃ الرحمان. ھذا جل اللہ تعالی فرجک وسل اللہ تعالی مخرجک وظہورک وجعلنا من انصالک ووانک وشیتک ومحبیک. السلام علیکم اہل بیت النبوہ ومعدن الرسالہ ومختلف الملائکہ جميعا ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ مع صلوات اللہ.
So brother, please wait until sister they go. Please sister go quickly.